Hey Boat Dragons, I'm so glad you joined me on the channel today. I am doing my official review for Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, Book 5 in the Stormlight Archive series. And this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I'm going to do my very best not to give any spoilers. I am going to be having some spoiler-filled discussions on my channel after the new year, so keep that in mind. If you are looking for spoiler-filled content, you can join me for those, okay? But for right now, this is spoiler-free. Now, I cannot guarantee that there will not be spoilers for the first 4 books in the series, right? So if you are watching this video, I'm assuming you have probably read the first 4 books in the Stormlight Archive series. If you haven't, I would probably step away from the review. I'm not going to give heavy spoilers for those, but there will be some things that I may accidentally touch on that will be spoilery. So keep that in mind, okay? Wind and Truth is the final book in the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. It's broken up into 2 different arcs. My understanding is that he is going to have a 10-year gap between this book and book 6. So if you are looking for a resolution to this series anytime soon, you're not going to get it. And I've seen other people talk about how they may not read the second arc. They may just decide that this is good enough for them. I don't feel that way. I did not get all the answers that I wanted in Wind and Truth, and so I will be reading the second arc whenever it comes out, but I know he's going to be taking a break, and we probably won't get book 6 until 2030, so that's going to be interesting. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the details of this book. I'm just going to talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. It does pick up pretty much right after the events of Book 4 of the Stormlight Archive, which was Rhythm of War. The book is written in a very interesting way. It's written as though we were following these characters over a 10-day span. If you remember from the end of Rhythm of War, if you read that book, you know that there is a major confrontation about to happen, a major duel. Dalinar has made a deal with one of the gods of Roshar to battle it out for the fate of Roshar. And so we've got this epic battle that we know is coming, and so this book is divided up over 10 days, and at the end of that 10 days we're assuming that this major confrontation is going to happen that is going to end the book on a Sanderlanche, as so many fans have called it. I will say it mostly does that. I felt like the ending was pretty well resolved. It wasn't exactly how I hoped it would end, but it was good. It was a good ending. Was there a Sanderlanche? We'll talk about that. So let's talk about what I liked, and I'm gonna put my eyes on here because I did make some notes for my thoughts on the Stormlight Archive here. So what I liked. I really liked that we were constantly learning new things about the magic system on Roshar. I think Brandon does really well with his complex magic systems, giving you little bits and pieces of it over time, and with this series it's no different. The magic users in this series are learning more about themselves and their new powers. We're constantly learning new things about those powers with them. So that's kind of cool. You know, we learn new things about light weaving, and we learn new things about what it means to be a bondsmith, and we're learning new things about the different realms of this world. There's the spiritual realm and the realm of forms, and then there's the real world, or the physical world as we see it. And we're learning new things about how the different magic systems interact with those different realms, and how they differ in power depending on which realm you're in. I thought that was really quite interesting. I really enjoyed that. We did spend quite a bit of time in the book in the spiritual realm, which was interesting. The crossovers felt cohesive with the story. If you remember in Rhythm of War, there were a lot of crossovers, a lot of Easter eggs from other books in the Cosmere. So this is definitely one of those books that if you are not well read in the Cosmere, you might feel a little lost. But for those familiar with the Cosmere, I would say that the crossovers felt very cohesive. It's no secret that Brandon Sanderson is beginning to work on the next era of Mistborn, which he's calling Ghost Bloods. There's a heavy amount of Ghost Blood activity in this final book in the arc. We started to see it in Rhythm of War, and it's fairly prominent in Wind and Truth as well. So that was good. I felt like it worked well. I didn't feel like it didn't click and that it wasn't supposed to be there. It felt real. And so I liked that part of it. We got more Wit or Hoyd, or he's known by a few different names, Cephandrius and Midius. And I'm like, okay, how many names does this guy actually have? But we got a lot of him in this book, which I thought was cool. I felt that his parts in previous books, while good, were rather lacking, and I didn't get enough of him. And he's one of the most mysterious characters in this series. And so I felt like we got a good dose of Wit in this series, and we learned more about him. I learned some things about Wit that I was just floored by. I'm just throwing that out there. We do learn some things about him. Not everything. There's still more mysteries to come, but we do learn more about him. So keep that in mind. That was a very good thing. We get some answers to some burning questions that we've had. And if you are one of those people that read The Sunlit Man and were kind of confused like I was, there were things that apparently happened prior to The Sunlit Man that we were just kind of in the dark about because it hadn't happened yet in any of Brandon's books. So we do get answers to that in this book. If you read The Sunlit Man and you were like, oh man, I want answers, what's going on here? You're going to get some answers. And I'm not going to say anything more about that. I don't want to spoil anything. Just know that you will get some answers about those connections. The Sander Lanch. Was there a Sander Lanch? Kind of. It was more of a Sander crash. It wasn't a Sander Lanch. It wasn't as momentous as a Sander Lanch usually is. But there was a Sander crash, and I was happy with it. It worked well. The ending was a surprise. I had so many ideas of how I expected things to end, and it surprised me how it ended. Was it a good ending? Yeah, it was fine. It just wasn't what I was expecting. That's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I think if he wanted to shock his readers, he did that. I think he pulled that off well. And I think that probably was his intention because, he wants to lead into the next arc of the series. And I can't fault him for that. That's perfectly fine. So, what I didn't like, and let's talk about that in terms of the ending for just a minute. And I'm not going to go into spoilers. Again, this is completely spoiler-free. I feel like I wanted more closure with the ending, and we only got more questions than we did answers, I think. There is a letdown, I think, in terms of what I expected from the ending. Everybody's different. I'm not saying that the ending is a letdown universally. I don't think so. I don't think it is. Everybody is going to go into this with different expectations. I'm just going to say that it was a bit of a letdown for me because it was different. I think I was expecting more from the ending, but it was still a good ending. Please don't hear me saying that it wasn't a good ending. It was. It just kind of left me wanting personally. Overuse of modern words detracted from the story. I personally feel there are modern English words that we use in the modern day that kind of permeated throughout the book a little bit. I felt myself being taken out of the story because of that. When you go into a fantasy novel, you expect fantasy words, right? You expect words that make sense in the context of that made-up world. Brandon Sanderson uses a lot of modern words in a story that is not supposed to feel modern. And that's just kind of his MO. He does that in a lot of his books. And it's not bad. I just felt like I wanted to be completely immersed in a fantasy world. And I can't do that when I'm having modern English words that I use every day in my speech. And so that kind of took me out of the story a little bit. That bothered me. Honestly, it did. I would rather that not have happened, but it's fine. One of those words in particular that pops up a lot in this story is therapy and therapist. And I'm like, could we not have come up with a more fantastical sounding word for that kind of fit the world? But, it is what it is. It's fine. It's not a huge letdown for the book or for the series. It wasn't quite doing it for me in that respect. I also felt like the book was way too descriptive in places that it probably didn't need to be. There were chunks of the book that I felt were just way too drawn out and not much was happening. I was kind of bored in places. Specifically with certain characters. I felt like Kaladin was more of a cameo throughout most of this book. He had some great moments, but overall it felt like a cameo. Then I felt like Zeth was focused on a little bit too much. I was kind of bored by some of the chapters that featured Zeth. And I knew in this book that we were going to get a heavy amount of Zeth on his journey of discovering who he is and everything like that. I knew that that was going to be a thing in this book. But I hadn't expected it to be so much, especially when the last book was kind of leading into this big epic battle that was supposed to happen between Dalinar's champion and someone else. I thought we were going to get a whole lot more of Dalinar than we did. And again, Dalinar kind of felt like a cameo. It wasn't bad. I wanted more. I wanted more of him. I wanted less of Zeth. I wanted more of Kaladin. Kaladin's been my favorite character for most of this series. I really like Dalinar as well. I kind of wanted more of them, and that's just a personal preference. They were there, don't get me wrong, and they play a major part in the story. I just wanted more, and that was a little bit disappointing, but it's fine. It's fine. I think the biggest thing that detracted from this book for me was the therapy angle. And I mentioned earlier that therapy and therapist was used a lot in the book, but the whole aspect of one particular character taking a different path from what they've been throughout the entire series, and now they're becoming a therapist of sorts. I personally felt like it was a bit heavy-handed, and the therapy angle was used a bit too much, and I don't think it was done well. I really don't. I don't feel like it was done well. Other people are going to approach it differently. I firmly believe that therapy is important. Do not hear me saying that therapy is not important. It is. It's extremely important. And it plays a huge role in a lot of people's lives. I just don't feel like it was done well in this book. That's just me. Again, not going to be everyone's experience. So all in all, you can tell I kind of feel mixed about this book. And I'm trying out a new rating system. I'll probably talk more about that in future videos. I'm trying out a new rating system that is going to be simpler. It's a heart for a love, a thumbs up for a like, and some kind of frown or whatever for a dislike. I like this book. I'm giving it that good old thumbs up, and it was good. It could have been great, and I think I was expecting it to be great for being the final book in a major first arc of a story. I think you should read it absolutely if you are invested in the Cosmere. If you have not started the Stormlight Archive yet, definitely don't read this book yet if you haven't read the other books. But yes, I do think it was done well, and overall, it was a good story. I'm happy I read it. That's all I've got to say on this today. Let me know if you have read the book in the comments below. Please keep it spoiler free. I would really appreciate that. Please don't spoil major plots or anything like that for people in the comments. I will have a spoilers section if you want to talk about spoilers. I will designate that in the comments below. It will be pinned, so do not spoil this for people, okay? Let me know if you've read it, if you haven't read it. If you want to dialogue more with me on Discord, hit me up in the private messages or whatever. We can do that. I would love to talk about that with you. And until next time, guys, make sure you're reading more books, and I will talk with you soon. Bye. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to all my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. Thank you so much.